This slidecast will be examining the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami and earthquake with a focus on the recovery process. On December 26, 2004 at 7:59 a.m. local time, a great undersea earthquake occurred off the coast of Banda Aceh, northern Sumatra. The earthquake was recorded at a magnitude of 9.3. This quake unleashed a force that is 1,500 times greater than the atomic bomb that leveled Hiroshima. The earthquake generated a tsunami that swept across 3,000 miles of coastline, impacting 14 countries from Southeast Asia to Africa. Over a period of 7 hours, waves that were up to 100 feet high devastated coastal communities. Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, and Thailand were among the hardest hit. This tsunami is recognized as one of the deadliest natural disasters in history. Dozens of villages were wiped from the map, over 200,000 people were killed, and 1.5 million were displaced. This disaster, due to the vast amount of people affected, triggered a worldwide humanitarian response. While countries around the world gave a total of $14 billion for recovery, distributing the aid was not an easy task. The devastation was staggering and extensive. Early responding groups were extremely overwhelmed. Relief workers had the enormous task of transporting supplies into very remote areas where roads had been destroyed. In some communities, there was an abundance of aid. However, in the remote locations, the distribution of food, clean water, and medical treatment seemed to be quite slow and limited. Internal conflict also resulted in challenges in getting relief where needed. At the time, Sri Lanka was engaged in a civil war with the rebel group Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam. Different parties controlled different regions of the disaster zone, and the agencies that were providing relief could be seen as benefiting the opposite party. In the early stages of recovery, victims were engaged in the grieving process. The sense of loss was widespread and impacted all communities. Many had lost friends, family, and loved ones. Corpses were being uncovered and burials were taking place. The cleanup process was underway and temporary shelters were also being built. The grieving process was further compounded by the loss of primary livelihoods in fisheries, tourism, trade, and agriculture. Fishing communities experienced a substantial loss. As shown in this photo, even the most basic resources have been lost: boats, motors, and nets that were necessary to maintain self-sustainability. Long-term environmental damage was also severe. Villages, tourist resorts, farmland, and fishing grounds were demolished or inundated with debris, bodies, and plant-killing saltwater, all of which had a great impact on the community for years to come. Relief workers were faced with a very difficult task. The death toll was very high, millions of people were displaced, and the economic and environmental damage was extensive. Despite the many challenges faced by communities, NGOs and the local governments played a critical role in the recovery process. Many of the basic needs of communities were met and public partnerships were developed to better assist tsunami victims. Counseling services, medical services, long-term rehabilitation efforts, housing needs, and education programs all aided in the recovery process. The tsunami highlighted problems within the impacted countries, including vulnerability. There was an evident lack of knowledge regarding tsunamis and the appropriate actions to take. Many were not aware of the signs of a tsunami, an example being the receding ocean. Because of this, many of the victims of the tsunami were taken by surprise. An early detection system has since been put into place and is known as the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning System. This will allow for countries in the Indian Ocean region to detect and prepare for tsunamis and other coastal hazards. However, systems must go beyond sensors and buoys. Education is critical in order to maintain a public alertness of the hazard. With better education, loss of life could be minimized in the future. The sheer scope of this disaster highlighted the need for the development of an international agreement on disaster reduction. In 2005, HYOGO was developed, an international accord to reduce disaster risk and losses for coastal communities in the future. The tsunami's toll on the affected countries was enormous. Families were torn apart, homes were destroyed, and many were stripped of their livelihoods. In the decades since, efforts to rebuild have absorbed large amounts of time and money from the impacted provinces and throughout the world. The results of these efforts are astonishing. Over a period of 5 years, individuals were back in homes that they owned, in some cases on their original land. Communities were rebuilt with new schools and in many cases improved infrastructure. Today, communities have since fully recovered physically and psychologically. However, painful memories and some ruined structures remain in place.